By 20 past 7 on the 2nd of January, I was sitting on the floor of my own hallway in yesterday's jumper, laptop balanced on the radiator cover, watching a number go up. It was the count of members who had been charged more than once that morning. When I first opened it, the number was 4,000 and change. By the time the kettle in the kitchen clicked off, it was 9,500. Rafe was on speaker beside my knee, and I could hear him typing, and I could hear his kid asking him something in the background, and I could hear him not answering his kid. At the same time, the doors were dead. 91 Halcyon clubs, 2nd of January, the single biggest morning in the calendar for a gym chain, and the readers on the turnstiles were refusing everybody. Sadie sent me a photo from the Cardiff Club at 7:31, and it was a queue out the door into the rain, 20-odd people in coats over their gym kit, and a 19-year-old on reception writing names on the back of a stack of induction leaflets, because the screen in front of her had been showing a spinning circle for an hour. Head office phones went from 12 calls waiting to 60 in about the time it takes to read this sentence. Bryony came out of the bedroom, saw the state of me, and put a mug down on the floor by my hand without saying anything, which is how I knew my face was doing something bad. I clicked refresh. 11,200. A woman in Sheffield had been charged 11 times for a spin class at £9 ago, and her bank had frozen the card. And I only knew that because she had already found the chief executive's work email and copied in everyone she could think of. Rafe said it again, slower, as if I hadn't heard him the first time. Callum, it's still going up. Halcyon Fitness is 91 gyms with about 190,000 members, and it runs on software we build ourselves in an office above a carpet showroom. I own the member app, the touchscreen terminals in the clubs, and the readers on the doors. What that means in practice is that when a woman in Doncaster cannot get into a building she is paid for, it is my morning. My mother's room at Ashcombe House costs £1,410 a month on top of what her pension covers, and I pay it, and nobody at work has ever known that. Gareth Pell ran delivery. In my own head, I called him the green light, because in 5 years I never once watched him say no to anything that had a date attached to it. He had a way of pressing his tongue into the inside of his cheek while you talked, a slow push. And once you learned to spot it, you knew the decision had already been made, and you were just filling air. He was not a monster. He drove Marnie to the hospital when she opened her hand on a broken mug in the kitchen and sat there 4 hours, and he brought in proper bread from the place on Wharf Street most Fridays, and he remembered that my mother was ill without ever asking me a single follow-up question about it. The Friday before Emlyn left, I was on the support rotation, which is a thing we all take a turn at, 3 hours of reading complaints that got kicked up from the club managers. I was building a small report on terminal failures, and I went digging back through the autumn. There was one from the Headingley Club in October, from a manager called Joss, saying her tills kept refusing bookings at peak hours and turning members away. Underneath it, Gareth had answered it himself. He had written that the payment confirmation wait was overcautious, that any club manager could switch it off from the settings screen in about 4 seconds, that support should tell the clubs to do exactly that, and that these did not need to come to engineering. I read it, said something unkind under my breath, and put it in the report as one line about training. Then I went to lunch. Emlyn Sar's last week was the week after. He had been with Halcyon since before it was a chain, and he had written the money side, which is the part that decides that a booking has actually been paid for, holds the class credits, matches a refund back to the right person, and talks to the bank. He wrote all of it. Not most of it. All of it. For 6 years nobody else had opened that part of the system, not once. And on the Tuesday of his last week the two of us sat in the small meeting room, and he tried to pour 6 years into me in 4 hours. He got about 6 pages down. Then he showed me how it actually goes out to the servers, which was him, by hand, from his own laptop, signed in as himself, because he built the whole thing back when we were 9 people, and there was no proper way to do it, and there had never afterwards been a week free to fix that. You understand what I'm telling you, he said. This one part of the platform has one author, and after Friday the author does not work here. I took it to Gareth on the Thursday. 2 weeks, I said. Give me 2 weeks in January, and I will get Emlyn's part shipping the same way everything else ships, so it is not tied to a man who is gone. Gareth's tongue went into his cheek, and he said we would look at it after the New Year campaign, and that he had a replacement in the pipeline. There was no replacement in the pipeline. There was never a replacement in the pipeline. Our holiday freeze started at 9 in the morning on the 18th of December. Nothing goes out after that until the 5th of January, No changes, no fixes, nothing, because the clubs are heaving and half the team is away. Marketing had bought radio and bus sides for the New Year pass, which was the usual thing. Join now, pay nothing until February, 12 free class credits in your account on the 2nd. On the 17th, at about 6 in the evening, the work to make those free credits actually work landed on my screen for review, and I sat down with it after dinner thinking it would take an hour. It took until 3:45 in the morning, because it was not the small thing everyone said it was. The bit that mattered was 3 lines long, and it changed the way a booking made with a free credit gets matched to a payment. Which is the money side? Which is Emlyn's? I read those 3 lines about 40 times. What it did was tell the system that a credit booking has no payment attached, so if the money side asks the bank and gets no clear answer, it should try again. There was nothing anywhere saying how many times again. Emlyn would have known why that was safe or not safe. Emlyn had left the building 11 days earlier and had not been replaced, and the 6 pages he wrote me did not go anywhere near it. At 3:41, I wrote my objection on the change, in plain words, because I have learned to write these things so a non-technical person can read them. I said this touches the payments part of the platform. I said the only person who has ever worked on that part left the company last month. I said we have no test that covers what happens when the bank does not answer and it keeps asking. I said hold it until the 5th of January. We launched the campaign anyway. The credits just land 3 days later than the poster says. Then I put the kettle on because I was too wired to go to bed. At 3:52 my phone went. Gareth. He was awake, he said, because he had been on with the agency about the radio spots. He sounded fine, which was somehow worse. He asked me to talk him through the concern, and I did, twice. And the second time I used the word unlimited, about the retrying, and I heard him make a small noise like a man reading a menu. Callum, it's 3 lines, he said. It's 3 lines in the one part of this company that has exactly 1 author, I said. And he doesn't work here anymore. That's the whole objection. There is nobody to ask. Then it goes out now, and if there's a problem in January, we've got the whole team back on the 5th to look at it. A pause, and then the thing I have thought about most since. Mate, I need this in before 9. Marketing have spent 90 grand. Don't be the reason. He approved it himself at 4:02 in the morning. I have looked at the timestamp more times than is healthy. Approved by Gareth Pell, 4:02, with a note saying reviewed and low risk, and then it went out to the servers at 4:20, and the freeze came down behind it at 9 like a shutter. I slept for 2 hours and woke to my phone buzzing itself across the bedside table. Marnie had got up, seen it, and gone off like a firework. She tests our stuff, and she is the most quietly frightening person in the building. She wrote on the change, at 7:08, that she had not signed off on anything, that no test run had happened, and that she wanted Callum's objection restated on the ticket in his own words, so it was there in black and white. Then she messaged me directly asking if I was all right, which nobody else did. Rafe put a single line in the group chat, cool, 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 and then a photo of a man calmly drinking coffee inside a burning room. And 11 people liked it, and nobody did anything, because it was the 18th of December, and everyone was 3 hours from the pub. Sadie, who was 3 months in and had never seen a freeze before, asked me at her desk whether it was normal to ship to the money system at 4 in the morning on the last day. I told her it was not, and she wrote something down in the little notebook she carried everywhere then, which I found unbearably sad. Here is what happened in the fortnight nobody was watching. The new credit logic made the terminals a fraction slower to confirm a booking at busy times, because the money side was asking the bank more often. When a terminal cannot get an answer in time, it is supposed to refuse the booking rather than let somebody through unpaid. Club managers hate that. So they did what they had been told to do in writing months earlier. They went into the settings screen and switched the payment confirmation weight off. Not 1 or 2 of them. On the 29th of December, I pulled the settings report for something completely unrelated and counted 62 clubs out of 91 running with that check turned off. I messaged Gareth about it that afternoon. I got his out of office, which said he was back on the 5th of January and that for anything urgent I should contact Gareth Pell. All 91 clubs opened at 6 on the 2nd of January. Rafe rang me at 6:20, and I knew from the first syllable. He is a flat, dry man who narrates his own funeral, and he said, "So, we're charging people a lot." My first 4 minutes went like this. Laptop open on the hallway floor because that is where the charger was. Pull up the payment log, sort by member, find one member with 9 attempts on the same 9-pound class in 4 minutes, then find another, then stop counting because the list would not stop loading. Every one of those charges was real. Every one of them had left a real person's bank account. What was actually happening was simple enough to say out loud and horrible to look at. Somebody books a class with a free credit. The money side sees a booking with no payment attached, goes to ask the bank, does not get a clean answer fast enough, and tries again. And again. And there was no ceiling on again. Meanwhile, the terminals in 62 clubs were not waiting for confirmation anymore, so they cheerfully let everyone through and handed the booking on, and every one of those bookings joined the back of the same queue. The queue got long enough that the money side stopped answering anybody at all, which is why the door readers went dead, which is why there was a woman in Cardiff standing in the rain at 7:30 in the morning with a leaflet with her name on it. The office filled up one person at a time between 7:30 and 9, everyone still in coats, nobody taking them off. Marnie arrived with 2 carrier bags of food from the garage and put them on the printer, and that food sat there all day and got eaten at 11 at night. Astrid, who runs technology for the whole company and who I had spoken to maybe 6 times, came in at 8:40 with her hair wet from the rain and her face a color I have not seen on a person before or since. She did not shout. She said, "Tell me what you know," in order, and then she sat on the floor with her back against the stationery cupboard for the next 9 hours. We tried to roll it back first. That is the button that puts yesterday's version back, and it is meant to be the fire escape. Rafe ran it at 8:52. The dashboard went green in about 90 seconds, and we all had 4 beautiful seconds of relief, and then the charge count went up again. It had not touched the money side at all. It could not. The money side had never been wired into that path, because Emlyn always put it out by hand from his own laptop under his own login, and Emlyn's login had been switched off by the people who do that on his last day, correctly, the way it is supposed to be. I had to say that out loud to a room of people who did not build software. I said, the part that is on fire was written by one man. It goes out to the servers only by his hand and his account. He left 3 weeks ago. Nobody was hired to replace him, and there is currently no way for anyone in this building to change it. Astrid asked me to say it again. I said it again. Somebody's phone went off in the silence afterwards, and they let it ring out. Second thing we tried was turning the promotion off. Kill the free credits. No more credit bookings. No more retrying. Sadie found the switch in about 4 minutes, and she was so pleased, and I had to be the one to tell her that the setting that turns the promotion off lives inside the money side, and the money side had stopped answering, which meant the switch was on the wrong side of the door. Third thing was going round the clubs. If we could get the payment confirmation weight switched back on in all 62, the terminals would start refusing bookings again, and that would at least stop new ones piling up. We could not push that setting out ourselves because it is a per-club setting, by design, and so Joss from support and Sadie and 2 people from finance got a printed list and a phone each and started at the top. It took 5 hours. 11 clubs did not pick up. One assistant manager in Plymouth was running the building alone on his 2nd shift ever and did not have the password for the settings screen, and the manager who did was on a plane. Sadie stayed on with him for 40 minutes and got it done through the area manager, and when she hung up she went to the toilets and was gone a while. Fourth thing was me, and it was the worst call of the day. I thought if we cleared the backed-up queue by hand, the retrying would stop, so I cleared 3,000 of them at 10:15. Clearing one makes it try the charge one final time. 3,104 extra charges in 4 minutes, and I watched them land, and Rafe put his hand flat on the desk next to my laptop and said, quietly, "Stop, mate. Stop." I have not felt anything like that before. I still think about the fact that I did that, not Gareth. Fifth thing was finance asking whether we could just put back last night's copy of the records, which we had, and which would have wiped out every real booking and payment taken between midnight and now, 19,000 of them, and would not have unmade a single charge, because the money had already gone. You cannot reach into 190,000 bank accounts and pretend the morning did not happen. We got Emlyn on the 4th attempt, at about 10 past 10, on his brother's phone. He was decent about it, which I did not expect. He gave us 25 minutes standing in someone's garden in the cold. He told me where the retry limit lived and that there had never been one, because the queue was supposed to be emptied every night by a small cleanup job that also ran under his account and had therefore been quietly doing nothing since the day he left. Nobody had noticed, because the only person who would have noticed was him. Then he said the thing that Astrid asked me to write down word for word. I told the three of you in my last week that nobody else had ever opened that part. I gave you 6 pages. I don't have a laptop, I don't have an account, and I don't work there. I can talk. I can't touch anything. Gareth arrived at 11:05, an hour and 40 minutes after Astrid, gray in the face, saying he had been driving back from his sister's. He stood at the edge of the room with his coat still zipped and asked, to nobody in particular, whether we had tried rolling it back. What actually stopped it was blunt. At 11:12, Rafe and I turned off the machines that do the charging. Just stopped them, mid-queue, which meant no bookings and no payments went anywhere for the rest of the day, and every club went to pen and paper at the door. Then I pushed a change to the terminals, which I could do because my part of the platform goes out the normal way like a grown-up system, to make them record a booking and not ask for money at all. That took until 13:40. Then we spent the rest of the day, and most of the next 3, finding and refunding 61,304 duplicate charges worth just over £2.1 million, which took between 3 and 5 working days to land back in people's accounts, which is a sentence I said on the phone to a woman in Sheffield whose rent had bounced. There was a van from the regional news outside the Headingley Club by 2 o'clock, filming the paper sign on the door. The review was on the 8th of January in the big room with the bad blinds. Astrid, Gareth, Marnie, Rafe, Sadie, Joss up from support, Hazel who runs the clubs, and 2 from finance who said nothing for an hour and wrote constantly. Astrid opened with 4 words. Walk me through it. I walked her through it, for about 20 minutes, off my screen, in order, no adjectives. When I got to the part about the money side having one author and no way in, Gareth came in over the top of me and said that this was a risk that predated him, that it was frankly a failure of the previous technology leadership, and that Emlyn should have documented his work properly before leaving. Marnie said, without looking up, that Emlyn wrote 6 pages and mailed them to 3 people, and that she had hers. Astrid asked about the 4 in the morning approval. Gareth's tongue went into his cheek, and I felt something in my chest go very calm. He said the freeze came down at 9, that marketing had committed the spend, that it was a 3-line change, and then he said, and Callum reviewed it. Astrid turned her head to me. I said I reviewed it and I objected to it in writing 35 minutes before it was approved, and that the objection was still on the ticket, and Marnie said hers was on there too, time-stamped, and that she never signed anything off. Gareth changed direction the way he always did, smoothly, like a man stepping over a puddle. He said that even so, that release could not possibly have caused this on its own, that what caused this was 62 clubs running with the payment confirmation switched off, which was an operations failure, nothing to do with engineering. Hazel started to say something, and he talked over her. He said he had been trying since Friday to find out who had told the clubs to do that he intended to find out, and that nobody in this business had ever put that fact in front of him. Nobody warned me, he said. Not one person. If a single person had told me that safety check was off in even one club, I'd have pulled the release myself that night. I lifted my notebook off the sheet of paper I had printed at 7:30 that morning and put it on the table and slid it down to him. That's the Headingley ticket from October. You answered it. Nobody said anything for a while. Gareth looked at it without picking it up. Astrid reached over, turned it round, and read it out to the room in a completely level voice. The payment confirmation wait is overcautious. Tell the clubs any manager can switch it off from the settings screen. Do not escalate these to engineering. Then his name, and the date, and the time. Gareth's hand went out towards the paper and stopped about 6 inches short of it, and stayed there. That was a different problem, he said, and his voice came apart in the middle of the word different. Astrid stood up. She said, Gareth, you're going to step out now, and Hazel and I will speak to you at 2. He went. Rafe waited until the door had actually closed, and then blew out a long breath through his teeth, and Sadie, 3 months in, sat there looking at the table like someone had rearranged the furniture in her head. The note went round the whole company on the 11th saying Gareth Pell had left Halcyon with immediate effect. There was no thanking him for his contribution in it, which people noticed. Astrid gave me the money side, properly, with 2 people to hire and my name on it, and the senior title Gareth had been sitting on since June, and the money that goes with it, and the first thing I did with the 4 weeks she gave me was get Emlyn's part shipping the same way everything else ships. so it is not tied to one man's laptop ever again. Emlyn came in for 2 days as a contractor at a rate that made finance wince and was worth every penny. Ashcombe House put their fees up in April by £70 a month. I set the new amount up at the kitchen table on a Sunday and went to see her that afternoon, and she was in the chair by the window with the blanket she likes. She said, "You look tired, love. Have you eaten?"